Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca. He invented the Inc. Canadian Insider Index, which is used by the Horizons Canadian Insider Index ETF, a 2017 Fund Data Fund Grade A Plus award winner. His website, CanadianInsider.com. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Well, thanks for having me back, Jim.
Ted, the Dow, a 1,000-point rise in one day. Never seen before. What's your reaction to that?
Well, that was quite a day, quite a Boxing Day in the U.S. Stocks certainly didn't go on sale there, but a 5% move in one day. You know, Jim, it's almost like the U.S. market is trading like an emerging market now, and I've just never seen any kind of move like that before in the most senior market in the global economy. And it shows that we've moved into a new era for investing, and I don't think it's going to be a particularly pleasant one, because seeing those kind of moves in one day, it's just not something you would expect from the major market, and certainly not something that investors had been used to since QE started after the financial crisis that dampened volatility. So we really have done 180 degrees here in terms of the characteristics of the market, and it's just not going to be plausible, I think, to expect things to sort of just go back to how they were 2 years ago or a year ago. We're into a very new era, and the market's heading off to a new destination, I'm afraid.
Well, the trading robots, I'm sure, are programmed to stop massive drops, but I don't think they have anything in their program that stops a massive rise, right?
Well, there's so many competing algorithms out there, and of course you've got, I'd be surprised if there weren't some vested interests trying to, push the market higher here towards the end of the year. But, I think the big question that we're hearing over and over again from people who subscribe to Inc. Research and use CanadianInsider.com is now a good time to get in. And we wrote a piece up on Christmas Eve on Monday. It's the final Inc. market report for the year, and made it available to registered users who can register for free on CanadianInsider.com. We wrote a little piece called "Is It Time to Jump on Board the Polar Bear Value Express?" And I don't know if you're familiar with the train, Jim, that runs through northern Ontario, run by the Ontario government, but it links some very important northern Ontario communities, at least in terms of the mining industry, and so it's got this train that basically takes you through the wilderness, and it's called the Polar Bear Express, and it just got us thinking, is now the time to hop on board now that valuations have come down? And I still think it's not a slam dunk here that we've seen the final lows in the market. I hope we have, but there's a couple indicators that we're looking at that still give us some concern that we may not be there yet, but there are also some positive developments. So we are moving, we are moving through into, as I said, a sort of a new destination here. The landscape is changing, but whether we're at the time of maximum pessimism in the market, which of course if you could time that would be perfect, that's when you'd want to get in, not when you want to get out. But are we there yet? We still haven't got a strong conviction that we're there, although we certainly appear to be getting closer. and we appear to be getting closer, certainly in the energy area. We seem to be very close. We also wrote in the report, we saw some very interesting insider buying at Suncor. I don't usually talk about specific names on this broadcast, but that company is so big. It's one of, I believe it's the largest energy company in Canada. It's widely held, broadly traded in New York and the U.S. In New York and Toronto. And we saw some good insider buying, which we reported on in that report, in our morning report, and we referenced it in our market report. But you can see it on kinsider.com. The insiders at Suncor are not typically big buyers of the stock. Sometimes they'll buy, but usually they're profit taking. They get a lot of their compensation through options and the like. So to see that kind of buying come in, I think is an important signal. We've also seen a nice jump in exploration and production insider sentiment in Canada, which leads us to believe we're probably pretty close to a low here in the Canadian oil patch. And Jim, but don't forget that we've had so much bad news thrown at the oil patch into those stocks. I mean, Suncor stock is flat for 5 years, excluding dividends. No, there's no good news built into that stock. I'm not sure you can say the same thing for the U.S. market. I think there's still plenty of good news that people are hanging on to. You can point to, tax cuts that Trump has done. You can point to various economic indicators. If you're looking for good news, there's unemployment, which the Fed does, which is really, in our view, backward looking. But if you're really, if you want to look for good news, you can find it in the U.S. Until all that good news gets dismissed as being irrelevant, there's still, I think, some good news baked into the U.S. market. And based on what we're seeing on our insider indicators, suggests that there's still downside risk there, despite this massive 5% move that we saw on Boxing Day.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp. is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, recent poll finds Canadian small business with their lowest confidence level in 2.5 years. Are they in the, seeing the right thing, or should they be gloomy?
Well, that's a very interesting data point, and because I think it reflects the reality on the ground in Canada. But it's important, of course, to recognize there is a difference between what's going on Main Street in Canada and the Canadian market. The Canadian stock market, for the most part, is more globally sensitive. Certainly the Canadian Insider Index, but we do have stocks in there that are geared towards the Canadian economy. A lot of them are geared towards the global economy. So looking at what's happening, with small business, I think it's a reflection of some of the realities that are going on this year. Well, first of all, you've got payroll taxes increasing, not only in British Columbia, but across Canada. I believe the new CPP premiums kick in. Well, that's a job killer, and it either that or a margin killer for a business. So, there's nothing to sort of douse optimism in private sector than to slap on a bunch of payroll taxes. So we have the Trudeau government doing that. Why they did that right in the year they were going to go for re-election is beyond me. I guess they weren't really thinking too far ahead back when they agreed to this in their little I call it a political IOU to Kathleen Wynne, who was for those listeners who don't remember, she was the premier of Ontario who basically ran up the debt in that province while she was in power, and she also endorsed Mr. Trudeau when he ran against Mr. Harper. And lo and behold, one of her pet projects was to increase payroll taxes so that they could beef up the CPP. So now we're doing this, and just in time for Mr. Trudeau's re-election bid, which isn't going so well. They're neck and neck now with the Conservatives in the polls. I just saw another Nanos poll out today. It's 1% difference, 1 percentage point difference, which is a statistical tie. So the Liberals have managed to essentially make it really hard for themselves. On this program, Jim, in the past few years, I've been upbeat on the Canadian economy earlier, a number of years ago, and that turned out to be, I think, pretty accurate. The Canadian economy, I think, surpassed a lot of people's expectations. However, in 2019, things aren't certainly not looking exceptional for the Canadian economy. I think that's the best way you could describe it. And at worst, we're flirting with a recession here, depending a lot what happens in the United States. So it's going to be a tough road for the Liberals to hoe here. And we'll have to see how the next few months pan out. But no, that small business survey is not a good indicator, and I think it just reflects the reality. The government policy has lost its way in Canada. The oil patch is a mess, and they're bringing in payroll taxes. They've done some good things on capital cost allowances to help the manufacturing sector compete with the Americans. One could argue they've done an okay job on the housing side in reining in some of the excesses that were there. But none of that's going to pay off in the polls for them when it comes to votes, unfortunately. And they would have been far better had they cut taxes coming in here instead of raising them, or at least not raising them. Going into an election year, so they're going to have a tough time. Trudeau is really making it hard for himself, and it's almost kind of a repeat of 1972, it seems, where his father, started, was very popular in office, and then he lost the election to Robert Stanfield, who was, the antithesis of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He was a very kind of plain politician who couldn't catch a football. So now we've got Andrew Scheer versus Justin Trudeau. So shades of 1972 are quite remarkable.
Mm-hmm. We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features to our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE symbol CRL and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, do you think the Canadian election will be run on the issue of taxes, carbon taxes, small business taxes, and so on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Conservatives are going to drive home the carbon tax issue, and the Liberals have nobody to blame but themselves for how they've handled it. They've got a pathetic environment minister who's done nothing to advance their cause. She's been a total disaster. I mean, and why do I say that? Well, first of all, look how many provinces have bailed on that plan, including Alberta. Alberta should be their closest ally on this, and Alberta's gone. I mean, this whole environmental strategy by the government has been a complete failure. And, why he doesn't have a new environment minister in charge, they're going into the campaign with that bench team, and, good luck to them. So they've let the Conservatives define the carbon tax for them, and that's that's a big mistake in politics. You don't let your opponent define the issue for you. And problem with the Liberals on this issue is that they're going to say it's revenue neutral. Well, actually, it's not revenue neutral. In British Columbia, it's not revenue neutral anymore. So it's not revenue neutral right across Canada. So they can't really say that in British Columbia. They shouldn't say that. And if they are saying that, it's wrong and it's not true. So they've got no credibility on this revenue neutral stuff. In fact, the Liberals, they only really, their best credibility is when it comes to raising taxes, not lowering them. And that again is their own, fault for allowing that narrative to take place, because when they started in power, when they first were elected, they actually did a net tax cut. We went through the numbers, and when in the first Morneau budget, it was actually a net tax cut when you include the child tax benefit and those monies that they gave back to lower and middle income. But they let themselves be defined as tax and spenders, and that's their own choice to some extent, and sometimes they've actually encouraged that narrative. So the problem that they're going to have here is they've allowed Andrew Scheer to run with the carbon tax. And, whether you're in favor of a revenue neutral carbon tax or not, that's really beside the point, in that the way the Trudeau government has rolled this out, it's been such a mess that they've got now a checkerboard carbon strategy in different provinces. There's no real single mission that they've got Canadians to rally around. They're trying to say, well, you have to put a price on pollution. Well, we'll see if that flies versus Andrew Scheer saying, they want to increase the taxes on you driving your kids to skating, and I think the Andrew Scheer message is going to win out on that, but we'll see.
Well, if the carbon taxes were going to the solutions to not using your car, to transit, and by the way, for so many Canadians, transit is not an option. If you live in small town Canada, where's the transit? There is no transit.
Well, Jim, and I use public transit in Vancouver a lot. I'm a big user of the Canada Line, but you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, I live fairly close to the Canada Line, and but still, when I need to take my kids somewhere, it's not always feasible to pack them in to the Canada Line. In fact, when you're taking a whole family on transit, it's sometimes still cheaper to actually drive a car. So, it's all fantasy that people are just going to switch. Now, you're going to have that narrative about is this tax going to decrease carbon consumption? And again, that's going to be another one the Conservatives are going to win at, because they're basically going to tell people it doesn't really matter what we do, because China is a big polluter, and no matter what we do, why should we be paying this? And so I think that's going to win the day on the arguments, and so it's going to it's going to be a hard one for the Liberals to claw back on, and because they've just taken their eye off the ball. You can't, in politics, you've got to keep your message straight right from day one, and they just haven't been able to do that on their green plans. So things could change. Maybe there will be some type of event or something that gives them that turns the narrative. But when you're relying on sort of things that are outside of your control to help you out, but that's not where you want to be in any political race. So, as for investors go, I think that the impact will be minimal here. I think if whether you get a liberal or conservative government, I don't think it's going to have a big impact on the stock market in Canada, because it's so geared towards a global economy. You may have an impact on the Canadian dollar if you have a minority government, for the short term, but in general, really what happens in the United States is the big deal. And boy, we spent a lot of time talking about some of the issues in Canada. They're nothing compared to the issues that are going to be confronting the United States in 2019. You've got a president that's now going to face a hostile House of Representatives. You've got a fiscal situation in the U.S. that looks more, like a European peripheral economy than the major economy in the world. You've got uncertainty with China in terms of the trade war. That's still not a slam dunk. There's still so many people in the market who believe it's all going to work out. And as I said, until you get everyone believing that, trade is not going to be a big benefit, and that's not going to prop up the markets. Because, Jim, look what happened when they signed the new NAFTA. Canadian stocks went up for 1 or 2 days, and that was it. So even if there is a deal, some kind of deal with China, unless it's some very broad, far-reaching form deal, which I just don't see happening in 90 days, it's just not going to have a long-lasting impact on the market, because people are going to go right back thinking about the Fed and have they overdone it on tightening, which we believe they have. The Fed's kind of trying to get back to normal here, but they don't quite know what normal is. They'll only know after the fact. And the fact is that global debt now is higher than it was 10 years ago. So these interest rate increases are having a much bigger impact every step of the way than they did 10 years ago. And we're not really going to know how big of an impact until it's all done. And I think we're kind of seeing those impacts right now in the marketplace. And it's going to be a tough 2019 to kind of get everything back on track here, I think, in the United States on a policy side, and including monetary policy. So Canada's going to be interesting, but the real issues are in the United States, and that's where investors are going to have to keep focused on in the new year. That's for sure.
Ted, thank you so much for chatting with us.
And Happy New Year, Jim, to you and all your listeners, and we'll talk to you in 2019.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca, his website, CanadianInsider.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. If you have questions for Ted or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Best of the season.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.